He played drunk in a World Cup match, and somehow he was still the best player on the pitch.
Un nome famosissimo agli appassionati di calcio, Garrincha, famosissima ala, che ha lasciato il calcio da un po' di tempo.
No, non ho lasciato.
Non l'hai lasciato, quando riprenderai a giocare?
Sì, dopo la Coppa.
Dopo la Coppa.
This is the story of Mané Garrincha, the man with crooked legs who danced past perfection, conquered the world, and lost everything along the way. A man so gifted that Brazil never lost when he played alongside Pelé, yet so broken that even victory couldn't save him. Before he became a world champion, before the parades and the cheers, Garrincha was just a boy from Pau Grande, a poor industrial town outside Rio de Janeiro. He wasn't supposed to play football. In fact, doctors said he could barely walk normally. One leg was 6 centimeters shorter than the other, one curved inward, the other out. But when that boy touched a ball, something changed. What looked like deformity became rhythm. What looked like limitation became art. On the dusty pitches of Brazil, a new kind of football was being born, and nobody knew it yet. Pau Grande, a small working-class town on the edge of Rio de Janeiro. That's where it began. October 28th, 1933, Manuel Francisco dos Santos was born into poverty, surrounded by factory smoke and red dust. To everyone around him, he looked like a boy destined for anything but football. His legs were different. One bent inward, the other turned out. The right was 6 centimeters shorter than the left. Doctors called it a deformity, but fate called it something else. Because when young Mané kicked a ball, those same twisted legs started to dance. On the dirt pitches behind the textile mills, he'd take on men twice his size, leaving them spinning in the dust. The ball obeyed him like it was part of his body, every feint, every shimmy pure instinct. The locals gave him a nickname, Garrincha, after a little bird known for darting through the forests of Brazil. And that's exactly what he was, light, unpredictable, impossible to catch. By the time he was 19, word of the boy with the crooked legs had reached Rio. Botafogo scouts didn't believe the rumors until they saw him play. In his first trial, he humiliated Nilton Santos, Brazil's World Cup left-back, dribbling past him again and again until the defender begged the coach to sign him immediately. Within weeks, Garrincha had joined Botafogo, and in his debut match he scored a hat-trick. The boy who wasn't supposed to walk was now Brazil's most dazzling dribbler. And for him, football wasn't work. It was joy, a child's laughter disguised as genius. But what nobody realized yet was that joy would come with a price the world's most gifted winger would soon have to pay. At Botafogo, Garrincha wasn't just another winger, he was a phenomenon. Every touch, every feint felt like a dare. He didn't just dribble past defenders, he toyed with them, waited for them to recover, then did it again. Crowds came not to watch the match, but to watch him. Rio fell in love with his freedom. He didn't care for tactics, formations, or fame. Garrincha played as if the world didn't exist outside the pitch. And maybe that's why his football felt so pure. By 1958, his talent was impossible to ignore. He earned a place in Brazil's World Cup squad heading to Sweden. That tournament was meant to be about the young prodigy Pelé, and in many ways, it was. But behind the goals and the glory, there was Garrincha, the spark that lit Brazil's rhythm. In Brazil's opening games, he left defenders frozen with body swerves that no coach could teach. Commentators described him as playing from another planet. He wasn't perfect, sometimes he'd dribble when he should have passed, but nobody could take their eyes off him. Together with Pelé, he formed one of football's greatest duos. Every time they shared the pitch, Brazil looked untouchable. And the numbers proved it, the Seleção never lost a single match when Pelé and Garrincha played together. In 1958, Brazil lifted their first World Cup trophy. Pelé was crowned king. Garrincha was the artist behind the throne. But his true masterpiece was still 4 years away. Chile, 1962. Brazil arrived as reigning champions, confident, brilliant, and then disaster struck. Pelé pulled up injured in just the second match. Suddenly, all eyes turned to Garrincha. He wasn't supposed to lead. He wasn't the captain, the strategist, or the star on posters. He was the joker, the dribbler who played for fun. But now, Brazil's fate rested on his shoulders, and something inside him changed. Against England in the quarter-final, Garrincha was unstoppable. He scored twice, one header, one perfect banana shot that bent through the air like poetry. The English defenders could only stare as the ball curled past them into the net. That night, he carried Brazil single-handedly into the semi-finals. Then came Chile, a brutal, chaotic match played in front of a hostile home crowd. Kicks flew, tempers flared, and Garrincha himself was sent off. He left the pitch with bruises and insults raining down, but Brazil still advanced. By the time the final came, he was feverish, exhausted, drained, barely able to stand. Yet he played anyway. Because that's what joy does, it refuses to quit. Brazil beat Czechoslovakia 3-1, and Garrincha, the man with crooked legs and a broken body, was named player of the tournament and top scorer. In that moment, he wasn't just the joy of the people. He was Brazil, a symbol of impossible beauty born from imperfection. But glory never lasts forever, and behind the cheers, his demons were waiting. On the field, Garrincha was untouchable. Off it, life was far less kind. The same simplicity that made him so pure on the pitch left him unguarded outside of it. He didn't understand contracts, fame, or money, he just wanted to play. But as his legend grew, the world began taking from him more than it gave. His knees, those miraculous, mismatched knees, started to crumble. Years of dribbling and fouls had taken their toll. At Botafogo, doctors injected painkillers just to keep him on the field. He'd smile, play through the agony, and limp back to the dressing room when the applause ended. By the mid-1960s, his body was breaking down, but his name still sold tickets. Then came the alcohol at first, to dull the pain, later to dull everything else. There were whispers of him drinking before matches, stories of bottles hidden in hotel rooms, tonic water bottles filled with gin. In 1969, those whispers turned tragic. Driving drunk, Garrincha lost control of his car. His mother-in-law was killed in the crash. Brazil mourned not just for the life lost, but for what Garrincha had become. Pelé was football's perfection, disciplined, polished, almost divine. Garrincha was its human soul, fragile, impulsive, and full of contradictions. When they played together, Brazil never lost. But in life, Garrincha was always playing alone. His marriage to singer Elza Soares, one of Brazil's biggest stars, brought headlines and controversy, but no peace. Fame, pressure, and addiction pulled him further from the joy that once defined him. The boy who once made the world smile could no longer smile himself. And yet, even as his life spiraled, the football never lost its poetry. Because when Garrincha stepped onto a pitch, the world still held its breath. Take the 1962 quarter-final against England. He dribbled down the right wing, stopped, looked back, and waited for his marker to catch up, then beat him again. It wasn't arrogance, it was artistry, a reminder that football could still be fun. Or his famous moments against Fiorentina in the 1958 friendly. He dribbled past 4 defenders and the goalkeeper stopped on the goal line, waited for them to recover, and then scored anyway. It was as if he played to make joy visible. When Pelé and Garrincha shared the pitch, Brazil's record was astonishing. 37 matches, 36 wins, 1 draw, 0 defeats, statistically unmatched. Emotionally unforgettable. Every touch from Garrincha reminded fans of what football was meant to be: spontaneous, fearless, alive. He didn't just entertain, he inspired generations of wingers to play with courage, to improvise, to dance, but those moments grew fewer. The genius that once defied the world was fading under the weight of pain, age, and addiction. And as his body slowed, the world moved on. The crowds that once chanted his name began to forget it. By the late 1960s, the magic was fading. Garrincha's knees were gone, his body exhausted, his spirit fraying. Brazil, the nation he once lifted to glory, was now watching a man trying to outrun his own shadow. He bounced between smaller clubs, Corinthians, Flamengo, Olaria, chasing form that would never return. The crowd still cheered his name, but more out of nostalgia than belief. They weren't watching the same dribbler who once made the world laugh, they were watching a memory. In the 1966 World Cup, he played his final match for Brazil, a 3-1 defeat to Hungary. It was the only match Brazil ever lost with Garrincha on the field. An ending written in cruel poetry. Off the pitch, things were worse. Alcohol took everything it could: his money, his family, his peace. By the time he was 40, he was living in poverty, dependent on the kindness of old friends. On the 20th of January 1983, in Rio de Janeiro, Garrincha died of cirrhosis of the liver. He was just 49 years old. At his funeral, thousands lined the streets, crying and singing his name. A reporter wrote, "The people have lost their joy. The same people who once chanted Ole now whispered prayers for the man who gave them that word." And yet, even in death, Garrincha remained untouchable. His legend refused to fade. Because Garrincha didn't just play football, he redefined what it meant to be human on a football pitch. He showed the world that imperfection could be beautiful, that genius could come from anywhere, even from crooked legs in a dusty Brazilian town. Every generation has its icons: Pelé, Maradona, Ronaldo, Messi. But Garrincha was something different. He wasn't chasing greatness, he was escaping sadness through joy. When he dribbled, he wasn't performing, he was surviving. And maybe that's why people loved him so deeply. He reminded us that football isn't just a game, it's emotion, laughter, rebellion, hope. In the record books, Garrincha is a World Cup winner, a Golden Ball champion, and a name etched among the greats. But to the people of Brazil, he will always be a alegria do povo, the joy of the people. The man who made football smile, even when he could no longer smile himself. He lived like he played wild, unpredictable, free. And though his story ended in tragedy, his spirit never died. Because every time a winger dares to take on one more defender, every time a crowd gasps at a feint or a flick, somewhere in the echoes, Garrincha dances again. He played with joy, he lived with chaos, and he left behind a story the world will never quite understand. Mané Garrincha wasn't perfect, but maybe that's why we loved him. Because football, like life, isn't meant to be perfect, it's meant to be felt. From the streets of Pau Grande to the World Cup final in Santiago, Garrincha gave us something rare, a reminder that beauty can be born from brokenness. That even a man with crooked legs can change the rhythm of the world. So the next time you see a player dribble past a defender with a smile on his face, remember the first man who made joy a weapon. Remember Garrincha. If you love stories like this, the legends, the heartbreaks, the magic that makes football more than a game, subscribe. And join us as we bring the beautiful game's most unforgettable moments back to life.